Da-da-da-da-da-da. All right, you want the full story on this? I got a real doozy, by the way, and I just pulled up on our free money question of the day. And the story on this Postal Service employee, do you want the full story? I can give it to you. Here it is. It was in New York. It was in Brooklyn. A Glenn Graves is a postal worker arrested in Brooklyn, captured on video. It sparks outrage. NYPD reviewing the arrest on Sunday of an on-duty postal worker. This was a few weeks back, maybe in Brooklyn, that was captured on video. Brooklyn Borough President Eric Adams said the worker, 27-year-old Glenn Graves, was almost sideswiped by a police car as he got out of his truck to deliver a package on March 17th. Graves said something to the police officers, but then started to cross the street. That's when he said the plainclothes cops backed up, got out of their car, followed him across the street around 4 p.m., and arrested him. Quote, "It's not a crime for someone to voice outrage after almost being struck by a vehicle." According to Adams, speaking at a news conference on the 22nd, this could have been another Eric Garner situation if Glenn had not responded as calmly as he did. Graves was placed in cuffs and brought to the precinct. His mail truck was left behind. Adams, a former NYPD captain, said the cops didn't buckle Graves' seatbelt and ended up rear-ending another vehicle on their way to the precinct.
Oh, wow.
The officers issued Graves a summons, Adams said, in hopes of sweeping this under the rug. Adam Graves is now determining if he will pursue civil litigation should he sue.
Well, first of all, he probably should. Secondly, why didn't get my mail over the weekend? I guess that's why.
Right. You got people that are upset about that.
But they left his truck there. I mean, they could have stolen packages and everything else.
Yep. And at what point does it become illegal to be rude?
Well, if he's interfering.
Rude?
But he's
was
not
he being rude? He was almost sideswiped.
He was almost sideswiped, but he was apparently rude. I mean, why else could you? I mean, I don't understand it. How could you arrest somebody for that?
Even if his response was, and I don't condone this, but even if his response was, "Hey, some slang word for cop," watch where you're going.
Correct.
I don't condone that, but I mean, that's not a crime.
Not a crime. Should be able to not be arrested for something like that.
Express your discontent.
You should be able to do it. Professor Allan Saxe from University of Texas at Arlington, political science professor there. The fight against ISIS, the latest bombings and the latest terror attack in Belgium, how is it affecting the 2016 race for president? Who gets the benefit? Will it be Hillary? Will it be Donald Trump? Ted Cruz? Who is it? Allan Saxe, thanks for coming on.
Good morning. Thank you so much.
What do you think here?
Well, terrorism is all over the world. We wake up this morning to know that yesterday in Lahore, Pakistan, 72 Christians were killed, over 300 injured in a specific targeting of Christians during Easter Sunday by an offshoot of the Taliban. We haven't heard the Taliban in a long time.
Right.
But they're around, and it's because the news media just doesn't play them up very much. They're still very active in Afghanistan, competing with Al-Qaeda for attention in Afghanistan, and an offshoot of them attacked a group of Christians yesterday on Easter Sunday. So the issue of Islamic terrorism is not just ISIS, it's not just Boko Haram, it is not Al-Shabaab in Somalia, it's all of those put together and many more.
Yeah.
And it's almost like a huge fountain of Islamic extremism spewing through spigots in different directions, and it's not good. And in the midst of that, we have a political election going on in the United States where the two front-running Republican candidates are hurling invectives at each other's wives. You begin to say, this is, you can't make this up.
I know. Yeah.
And meanwhile, Bernie Sanders did very well over the weekend against Hillary Clinton. He's showing some real political muscle. And I don't think Hillary believed that this was going to happen.
No, we all kind of think that Bernie Sanders was kind of selected as you got to have somebody. Somebody's got to be there.
That's right. And so they selected, hey, Bernie, why don't you get up there and do this? Okay. Yeah. And by gosh, he caught on. And I think it shows the real weakness of Hillary Clinton. In fact, Bernie Sanders finally seems to, I think, have found his oats a little bit. He's actually attacking Hillary Clinton by name.
Yeah.
And the way she's raising money now with George Clooney, hundreds of thousands of dollars for a couple for a fundraising event with George Clooney. And Bernie Sanders is now really attacking it and calling that obscene. He never would have done that a week or so ago. But now I think he has some impetus.
In fairness, it's a cheap shot. but because they all are raising money.
Oh, absolutely.
But Bernie Sanders taking a cheap shot against Hillary Clinton. To me, you're right. That's the story.
And he took off the emails, you remember, some months ago.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not going to talk about emails. And I think now he's beginning to believe,
Yeah.
maybe I should have talked about emails.
Yeah, and you know what? I got to tell you something. For us here in New York, we're not used to having any action when it comes to the presidential race because it never means anything.
That's right.
And all of a sudden, both the Republican and Democrat primaries coming up here on April 19th,
It's going to mean something.
it's going to mean something.
That's right. New York really is in play. I don't think Donald Trump can take New York, but Bernie Sanders against Hillary in New York could be an interesting battle.
Yeah, and he's saying that he can, of course he's saying it, but, you know, and I'm going to tell you the fact that Hillary is now all of a sudden, and we heard this over the weekend, focusing on New York, tells you if she didn't have to focus on New York, would she? She wouldn't, right?
There is a big headline this morning on the Drudge Report, and what it says is the FBI is going to interview Hillary Clinton. If that's true, that could be a big story.
Yeah, Christine.
Do you think that Donald Trump has no chance in New York?
I think I honestly don't know. I honestly do not know.
Yeah.
It is so volatile, it's very difficult to know. But he may have a chance in New York against Ted Cruz. It is a possibility. If you're thinking about the general election in November, that's more questionable, of course, if indeed he even gets the Republican nomination.
Yeah.
But in order to take New York against Ted Cruz, I think he does have a good chance of doing that. If he gets the Republican nomination and goes up against Hillary Clinton in New York, I think that's a little bit far off.
Yeah.
But in this election season,
anything can happen, right?
Anything can happen.
I mean,
That's exactly true.
There's haven't we been predicting all for the last year about this Trump thing, and every step of the way we seem to be wrong.
Exactly correct. I think the big story this political season is not just the rise of Donald Trump, which nobody, I think, could have foretold.
Yeah.
But Bernie Sanders.
Yeah,
I mean, who could have believed that Bernie Sanders, an unknown U.S. senator who is a self-described socialist, 74 years old, could actually do this well?
Especially, he's doing well with young people. That's
they just love
yeah.
him. I see that in my classroom here in Texas.
Yeah.
When I ask just in general, who are you for? A third of the class is Bernie.
Yeah.
And they're not very enthusiastic about Hillary Clinton. Now, that's anecdotal, but it could be very telling in regard to this election season.
And what do your students say when this this bickering back and forth, this ridiculous stuff over Trump and Cruz's wives and this whole mess?
I think it sort of goes over their head.
Yeah.
They just can't clue into it very much, and frankly, they don't follow it that closely. They follow the general things going on, but that's about it.
Yeah.
And by the way, there are so many major terrorist events going on in the world today. You begin to shudder at what is happening. It is not just ISIS, of course, in the Middle East, as we mentioned before. This terrible terrorist attack against Christians in Pakistan yesterday, I think, is an added dimension. There is a genocide going on against Christians by Islamic terror all over the world.
Professor Allan Saxe, I appreciate your time. Thanks for coming on this morning.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Here's Christine with an update at 7:17.